Lent gives us, of course, some really long Gospels. You know you're in for a long Gospel when the short form is 2 pages. So the long form was almost 4. I'm struck by the reality, and I think I know in each of our lives we have these moments where something ends up being the last time. Maybe it's the last time you played a sport, or the last time you were on stage, or maybe it was the last time all your kids were under one roof. You know what I mean? Insert the thing. Maybe it's the last time you had a normal conversation with a friend or a family member, and then something changed, and so you look back to that moment. And what's the sorrow there? Because I guess what I'm trying to connect those last time moments to is this loss that they're experiencing. Because the thing about those moments is, what drives them is that it's not just the consequence, it's that you can't go back. You can't go back. And so as we think about those in our own lives, these things that we carry silently for the most part, that's where this gospel starts. This gospel starts with Martha and Mary looking at a life that is no longer possible. It's irretrievable. And part of the problem is when Jesus chose to show up. He didn't show up in time to save them of that space. And we could spend millennia trying to decide, what that was or how that played out. All we know, though, is he shows up in that moment. He meets them right where they are. But what he doesn't do is restore the moment, because he can't. Let me say there's even 3 things that God cannot do. God cannot stop being God. He just cannot stop being who God is. And one of the other things God cannot do is God cannot change the past. God cannot change the past. I don't remember the third one, but we'll focus on those 2. But my professor told me there were 3, but I've always remembered those 2. He doesn't change the moment for them. He enters into that moment and he calls him out to something new. He calls him forward, not back. There's a Willy Wonka quote in there, but we'll let it go, right? If you can't go back. You got to go forward to go back. If we're trying to return to what those moments really represent, which is some kind of contentment, that there's some element of a unity or a unification in those thoughts or those moments. And we want to go back, and Jesus is saying, you can't. You can't go back. But what you can do is be called forward into new life. As I was saying to the little ones there, that there are moments in our lives that we say, that's broken, that's gone, that's finished. And that's where Jesus is showing up. So the real question isn't that we would say, Lord, can you restore this to how I remember it? The real question out of this gospel, I think, is where are the things and the moments and the relationships in our lives that we're saying they're done, they're dead, or that no new life can come here? And that's where Jesus is standing there saying, I am the resurrection and the life. And that's not some false optimism or some false hope, because our pains and our struggles and our relationships, they're very real. And we don't control, particularly in relationships, right? We can only control our half of it. But that's what Jesus is asking of us, is to say, my half is going to be rooted in being present. My half is going to be rooted in believing that new life can come here. And so if and when opportunities become possible to meet that I'll be ready for it. Otherwise, we'll just be numb. We'll just be glass half empty. Insert all of that imagery. Because God has never been our aspirin, that he takes our pains and is our pain reliever. That isn't how God lived God's own life in the person of Jesus, and it's not where or how he meets us in ours. And in this Eucharist, it's not our supplement, it's not our vitamin, it's not our pain reliever, but it is where God comes to meet us and say, let me gently, patiently strengthen you. Let me take that numbness out of your experience. Let me lead you back to light. I'm with you, and I'm going to call you forward. Anything less is not the gospel. Because again, otherwise this is a very strange story. That if you go, so you knew your friend was sick and you waited until he died so that you could get pretty cynical about this story if it wasn't really trying to teach us something deeper. And of course we know the consequence of this story is that the religious leaders are using this as the grounds to really go after him. Because what it definitely taught them was, we can't control this guy. We absolutely cannot control this guy. And the only way to get back into control is to shut him down. And that's so true, I think, for all of us. We've got to let God be God. We have to be open to the moments and to see the powerful things that he can do in our lives. But that's risky. I get it. I get it. There are just situations and moments that have passed or changed that are difficult for me to bring back onto my plate and say, Lord, I think you can bring life here. It's just easier for me to numb it or ignore it or let it go dark. But the reality is, as he entered into this moment, he's trying to enter into ours. And in this Eucharist, we come with our hurts and our pains and our bitterness and our frustrations. And he's saying, take my presence within you. I will gently and patiently lead you back to life. I will unnumb your numbness because I want you to know contentment and fulfillment. We can't go back, but he's calling us forward, just as he does for Lazarus. And the last thing I'll point out to you is that he commands the crowd to untie him, right? He can't untie himself. And so for each of us, our role is to be the kind of people that help those coming out of their tombs get unbound, get unstuck. And maybe that's just a listening ear. Maybe that's sometimes telling a good friend something they'd rather not hear. Maybe it's just being present for people in a moment of great pain. But that particular moment should not be glossed over, that he tells them, go untie him. He can't do it himself. And we do that for each other in community. And we're strengthened again in this Eucharist to do it more faithfully, more gently, more lovingly. Because anything less is just all of us coming here as disparate humans to hear God's word, receive his Eucharist, and then head back out. But we are connected. We are bound together in the best sense of that word. And so we rededicate ourselves to helping each other get free, get unstuck from the things that are in those tombs. Obviously, great foreshadowing coming to Easter when the tomb is going to empty. But for us today, may we acknowledge those moments that are past, those that we feel like, I don't see where life can come there. And just give Jesus a space to work some grace in our lives. May God be praised.